First of all, I just want to say, just to pay tribute to all the health professionals, and we had the HSE in before this. It has been a very, I'd say, tiresome time in the sense of, I know that everybody's lives are so important, and we, even as members of the Oireachtas, have to be very careful that we put, people's health first and lives first. Can I just say there has been confusion, and we are now heading into the cold, the flu season, cold and flu season, and are we actually going into a second wave? This morning you would have heard, and it was on the radio, where people were not aware that they could ring their doctor free of charge to get information about the symptoms and what they need to do. Can I also ask you about local businesses that I have been dealing with over the last few months, and you've spoke about Kildare, Laois and Offaly. I live in Carlow town, and I live in Great Cullen, Carlow, which is half in Laois and half in Carlow, and that has been very hard when we are so far away from Laois Offaly, and part of some businesses there had to close. Now, I did go to the Minister and call for a buffer, so I think, again, if something like that ever happens, and I hope it never does, that there has to be more communication with those businesses and those people. I mean, I have housing estates in Great Cullen that are half in Carlow, half in Laois. There was huge confusion. So I think when we are actually given information, we need to give clarity on where exactly they live and maybe look at a buffer zone. That's just one question. The other one I want to ask about is the testing. And we've seen last week where 13,000 tests had been done in one day. Now, we have been months, and that was the most amount of tests in one day that was ever done. Can I ask you, are we now going to be ramping up the testing, particularly with the schools opening? We have seen the meat factories, direct provisions, and we are now there seem to be more in clusters. What are we doing with that? And particularly, I've had several phone calls about testing at airports. That has been a huge concern for me. And people coming in from other red zone countries that are not isolating, I've been told, now I have no definite cases, but my understanding is that there's been 14 days that people haven't been isolating on. The other thing I want to ask you about is the PPE. Have we enough PPE now, particularly with the spike in cases? We've got, as I said, the schools, we've got the hospitals. Have we enough, and for our frontline services, enough PPE? And the biggest question I want to ask you about is the wet pubs. I, like all of us here, have been contacted by the wet pubs. They say that they will be able to control their environment. They are the only businesses that did not open. A lot of them don't even know if they will be able to open. And also, I've had loads, there was huge confusion last week as well about dance studios, theatres, but in particular the dance studios, who contacted me that originally could have 15 in a group and now 6. Their livelihoods they say they're going to lose their livelihoods. Can I just ask you, I understand that you have to put people's health first, but if you are in a controlled environment and you can do it and you can go by the guidelines, how do you decide not to open wet pubs, not to allow dance studios and others like that to go back from 15, to go down from 15 to 6? Maybe you could come back to me on some of that. Dr. Glynn, I'll give you these questions. Thank you. I gave you a lot of questions there.
Thank you, Deputy. I suppose, first of all, I suppose your key question is, are we on the cusp of a second wave? I certainly hope that we are not, but there is no doubt that we have seen a deteriorating situation over the past couple of months, if we're being honest, really, since the start of July. And it's no surprise that we've seen more cases as we've eased restrictions. It's no surprise that we've seen greater proportion of cases and greater number of cases in younger people. All of that is entirely normal. And I just want to take this opportunity while I can to remove or to counter this narrative of blame that has taken up around younger people. Younger people go out to work, they run our health service, they run our education service, they keep society going. And so they come into contact with other people. And so by the very nature of their lives, we will see more cases in younger people. But that said, we have grown increasingly concerned overall at the number of cases that we're seeing. And that led to the recommendation of the additional measures last week for the country. I know that there's been some confusion around those measures, but at its heart, we're asking people to cut down their discretionary social contacts. We understand that's very difficult for people, but if we don't cut down the number of people that each of us comes into contact with, there is no doubt but that unfortunately the number of cases will continue to rise. And if the number of cases continues to rise, it will inevitably lead to more cases in older people and those who are medically vulnerable. And that they have to be our central focus in this. So all over Europe we're seeing an increase in cases. So far all over Europe we're seeing an increase in cases in younger people without a concomitant increase in hospitalisations in ICU. But there's simply no guarantee that that will continue. And indeed, if our number of cases continues to rise, we would be concerned about the impact that that will have in terms of hospitalisation, admissions to critical care, and indeed mortality. In relation to...
Lena, I'm going to have to cut you short. If you want to maybe provide further reply in writing to Deputy Murnane, I'm sorry.